Hello and welcome to the first open conversation of Navigating Scholarly Publishing Undercurrents with Samast AI. I am Chhavi Chauhan, founder and president of Samast AI, and I'm thrilled to have you viewing or listening to this much awaited episode. I have with me our outstanding industry partners, TNQ Tech and Lumina Datamatics. Joining us today are Sandeep Dhawan, Senior Executive VP, Dr. Shanthi Krishnamoorthy, Senior EVP, and Neelanjan Sinha, Neil, VP Products and Technology. So, market consolidation is not new to the scholarly publishing industry. Datamatics as a group has itself done many mergers and acquisitions, and might I say, quite successfully. I'm curious to know why this particular acquisition. I must say it's been 16 months since the acquisition of TNQ Tech by Lumina. I'm only hearing great things about both the companies. So this acquisition appears to be very strategic to me. So Sandeep, what made this partnership the right fit?
So Lumina Datamatics, as such, is very strategic in its acquisitions, and we look at many things. Our board and the CEO and the team here looks at different areas with the acquisition that we are looking at, and some of the major important ones, if I may say, would be around our shared vision and values. That's the first and foremost thing that we see because that's very important for any acquisition to be successful in the long run. Um, in the TNQ acquisition, we were very strategic, looking at how technology, including the AI and tools and the platforms that both the companies have, how can they help the content service providers or publishers as such? What are the client relationships? And we are always looking at long-term client relationships, and both Lumina and TNQ have that. Focus on employees and the overall society welfare. And those are the values that we look at. And overall, we felt that this was the right fit because of all these points coming together and all these features of both the companies, whether it's technology, whether it's the people, whether it's the values coming together and the domain expertise. So that's what led to this acquisition, and our board and the CEO and the team was very happy with that.
Awesome, very well articulated, Sandeep, and shared vision and shared values makes total sense. Let me pivot to you now, Shanti. Any acquisition comes with its own sets of challenges. And what has this acquisition meant for customers and partners? And when you look from here to 3 to 5 years ahead, what does this partnership enable that simply wasn't perhaps possible before?
Hello, Chavi. What excites me on this is the 16 months, by the way, and it's just a collective knowledge and the experience that both the teams are working together. TNQ has been very pioneered in journals. Lumina comes with both journals and book experience. So we are actually combining very deep editorial and publishing expertise. Not only that, both the companies invest heavily on technology and product thinking, which also means that we now enable all our publishers more holistically, whether it is a content creation, whether it is an editorial processes, whether it's a peer review or editorial services, production capabilities, accessibility, digital delivery, or discoverability. So this partnership is giving us a wide landscape, which is extremely product agnostic. I would say that, right? It's not just that we are just confining to journals. We are now able to cater to journals, books, magazines, conferences, etc. So what is it in it for publisher? What does it mean for them, right? So publishers continue to work with our teams so that they could understand publishing at a very nuanced level. The beautiful saying, which I always love, is the angel is in the details of the industry, not the devil. So we all enjoy the angel. We don't have any magic wand, but we do have a very openness in thinking, collaborating with our publishers, and we constantly believe in collaborations, research, and development very actively. And of course, we are very flexible and adaptable for the future.
Awesome. I love it. And I love the fact that you're thinking about a more holistic approach. And I completely realize there's no magic wand, though a lot of folks are selling quick and easy solutions in the name of AI driven transformation. Given the buzz and excitement around AI and the transformation happening in publishing right now, especially when the publishers are also dealing with operational pressure. There's fragmented workflows, and honestly speaking, there's definitely vendor fatigue that I keep hearing about. How do you see this partnership addressing those realities in a meaningful way? Perhaps, Sandeep?
So, Chavi, very good point that you brought up. The overall landscape is changing. A lot of publishers hear anything and everything around AI and it'll take over and it'll do this and that. But what they're looking for is something more than just a AI story and the buzzwords. You know, as a publisher, they're or a content aggregator, they are dealing with multiple issues. Be it the fragmented workflows, multiple systems, both inside and outside, in the front end, cost pressures, technology challenges that keep on coming up. So, they're looking for something more than just a buzzword or one off technology that'll only solve a piece of that. What we are trying to do as Lumina TNQ is trying to solve multiple issues, but doing them one at a time. So we are in, like Shanti said, we are at different parts of the workflow within the company. We are dealing with books, we are dealing with journals. So we know each one has its own nuances, and we are trying to solve that. We have a pretty large 600 plus people technology team. The focus for this is how can we take different pieces of the workflow and address them. Our platforms are solutions like the Xedit Pro, Integrity Central, or Pyramid. If you talk about these, they are trying to address different parts. So, like I was saying, we're trying to solve multiple issues, but doing them one at a time. And these platforms and tools are aimed at addressing different challenges that are there. You know, um, we share our philosophy, similar philosophy with the publishers that technology must solve and address real life problems with practical, implementable solutions. That's very important. So, in a nutshell, that's what we are aiming for.
That makes sense, practical implementable solutions. And I think with that, I want to pivot to you, Neil. So many publishers today are struggling with disconnected systems. There are talent gaps, and there are definitely challenges of integrating new technologies into sometimes obsolete existing workflows. So, from a products and technology perspective, where do you see the biggest opportunity?
Well, I believe the biggest opportunity is to stop looking at this only as a technology integration problem or through a single system. Disconnected systems don't just create workflow complexity, they create fragmented experiences. And each persona absorbs that fragmentation very differently. For example, an author, they will experience it as a silence after submission. An editor has coordination overhead. Operations, on the other hand, deals with multiple exception handling, something that in most cases no dashboard captures. And the publisher, they see the final outcome and wonder why it took the effort it did. So they always try working experience backwards, not technology forward. We name the experience, we understand each persona which needs to have, and then work back through workflow, data, design, automation, and other levers. And this is what we mean by experience led publishing, where experience is the brief and technology is the response. And this exactly has been thinking about most of the things we are building. For example, PubSuite, our end to end content production platform. The individual pieces are already running, even with some integration between them. And what we are working on now is piecing them together even more tightly, which helps us do two things. It lifts the experience for every persona at the same time. But more interestingly, now we are seeing that it is helping us start unlock things that weren't possible before. And it gives us a foundation which can absorb the next wave of innovation. And in all that, we try leveraging AI only where we should, not because we could. In fact, we see sometimes this biggest improvement comes with a very soft or a small intervention, maybe a clear instruction, a small UX change, a label reworded, and that helps a problem which people had learned to live with quietly go away without any feature or engineering lift. So basically, what we are trying to optimize for is to make publishing operations feel more connected, more humane, and easier to work through for all of the personas involved.
I love it, especially the experience led publishing bit. So let me pull on this thread a little bit more. The publishing industry is hearing constant promises around AI and automation, and publishers are equally concerned about governance, operational trust, and long-term reliability because everything is just so transient right now. So how is this partnership approaching innovation differently?
So, Chavi, one of the things that we recognized very early is that the capability alone is not enough. Like I mentioned, we are dealing with fragmented workflows, compliance expectations, vendor fatigue, enormous cost pressures, because the revenue models are changing on the publisher side as well as for the service provider side. So, to give you an example, one of our major products, which will give you an idea on the governance and how content or the data is managed, is RT.ai. Now, RT by itself is a AI-powered all text generation platform, which was developed by Lumina about 3 years ago, at the very nascent stage of when the AI was being talked about. And over the last 3 years, it has generated alt text for over 2.5 million images. And the platform has evolved from a standalone application to a high volume, high performance, human in the loop, only for the quality check at very limited areas, you know, and for exception handling. So RT by itself, if you look at it, it has a very strong governance model. What we did with it is we used Levenstein's edit model and checked the core performance, metric use, and made sure that there was a framework. So there was the AI piece, there is the quality assurance, and there is the human in the loop only for exceptions, which was there. And what we work with our publishing partners or our publishers is to look at those specifications in a very methodical way. And we were able to improve the output, acceptable output, if I may so, from 30% to 80% in a completely automated way. Okay. And the publishers currently are using this as an efficient way of managing accessibility for their ongoing production as well as for their back files. We have a very strong governance model. We have a very strong way of managing the content without it going outside and becoming part of other AI models.
That is so amazing to hear, Sandeep, because a lot of people are struggling with governance. And I think that would have to be a whole conversation in itself, given the thought that, Lumina has already put into governance frameworks and how you're holistically approaching them. But just moving on, publishing fundamentally depends on credibility and integrity. Those are the words we hear over and over again. As AI becomes more embedded in your operations, how do you balance quality, governance, human experience, and most importantly, business outcomes?
I mean, we all know publishing is all about trust, right? Whether it's a content quality or editorial rigor or it is integrity, everywhere trust becomes a primary non-negotiable criteria. So at TNQLD, we take a very pragmatic approach to AI. We first ask whether AI is truly the right solution, considering facts like you have to balance your cost, governance, security, explainability. So, do you really need AI? Once we decide when AI is appropriate, then the real challenge is boring AI. That's what Sandeep was talking about in RP. There is a real boring AI work which you have to invest, whether it is engineering, domain tuning, or workflow integration, monitoring, governance. A lot of hard work goes in developing, balancing quality and governance. So one example that we could share besides RT is also something we are working on, detecting a fabricated and manipulated references in publishing, which is the need of the hour. Especially, I saw the note yesterday: biomedical literature is going with 1.5% fabricated references. So we are working on the model. We are having a right model architecture, and we are also bringing human in the loop for doing it. But what we are also seeing in the industry is the editorial teams are already facing a lot of fatigue. A lot of tools are out. So we are actually burdening the people who are doing the editorial office. So we bring in pure metrics, which is primarily precision recall, explainability, and we will I'm making the word very clear, try to minimize the false positive. But equally important is what Neil is bringing from the design and the product side, that we also design a very, very intuitive, very supportive user experiences, whether it is editor, reviewers, or our own self. Design plays a very important role. And ultimately, this is our belief. A works best when you thoughtfully and put it into the publishing workflow. You can't randomly ask people, do this, do that, right? So you thoughtfully integrate into the publishing workflow. You bring in, then that brings in governance, human oversight, and user experience are all built around it.
No, it makes so much sense. And again, the fact that you're thinking about responsible innovation, it's really remarkable to me, being an AI ethicist. And I did catch on a word that you said, boring AI. I think to me it's quite unusual to frame AI conversation like that. So Neil, I'm really curious to know, what does boring AI mean in that context, and why that became important in the way your teams think about using AI in publishing workflows.
Actually, this framing came out of our own journey with this. When we first started experimenting with LLMs, we felt smart about ourselves. Why? Because the demos worked, they looked very cool, the capability was real, it was genuinely exciting. But very quickly we realized that smartness wasn't ours, it was of the model. And alongside that smartness came its gaps, which wasn't always reliable, it wasn't secure, scalable, correct, or sometimes not even cost effective. And that's when we started thinking about being safe. And we mean safe in a broad sense. It's about being reliable, secure, scalable, cost effective, handling data responsibly, all the things which one would care about, especially in an enterprise setting, in scholar publishing setting. And now the way we have come to see it, safe is the floor, smart is the ceiling. And you don't get to enjoy the ceiling if the floor isn't holding. Or, in other words, smart is like that upside, but safe is the minimum hygiene that we need to maintain. And the distance between a smart demo and the actually feeling safe to deploy, that gap was wider than we expected. The work that lives there isn't flashy. It's the engineering, the design, the governance, orchestration, thoughtfulness across people, process, technology, which makes a smart capability actually safe to run. And just a couple of weeks ago, we got ISO certified for responsible AI. But for us, it's not just a certification, it's more of a reinforcement of exactly the values which we are trying to bake it in, the kind of discipline it asks of us. And those are the bits that we call boring. But I do want to qualify, boring isn't literally boring for us. Actually, we find this piece of work or these aspects genuinely interesting. What we're trying to say is that it's just not the part of AI that gets the headlines. It's but it is the work that turns a capability into something which an editor, an author, an operations team can actually rely on every day. I also want to talk about very briefly about AI Lab initiative we have is one expression of that. It's a fast, low risk way for publishers to explore Gen AI on a real use case and see value before they commit to anything larger. But from what we are building with even Integrity Central, RT, broader platform, end-to-end content production platform, where we are headed towards with Pub Suite and a lot more.
Yeah, Neil, oh my gosh, that is amazing. Smart has to be safe before deployment. That is essential. And I would say it's not boring. I haven't heard of many people within our industry getting the ISO certification. So congratulations on that. And that is not boring. That is quite exciting. Finally, to conclude this conversation, let me ask you a tough question. In the fast evolving landscape, especially for our slow moving industry, Shanti, what do you think will differentiate successful publishers in the next 5 years?
Wow, that's a really tough question. I love all my publishers. I think people, of course, everyone wants to change, but people who like and demand transparency, and not just in documents, in true sense, and the people who are very open to a measurable outcomes, right? Um, so that's where good publishers will differentiate themselves, demanding transparency and aligned to the measurable outcomes. Those two are the key. highlights of a great publishers, in at least in the coming years, with LLMs and bots and humans trying to consume the content. Great. Yeah.
Very well said, Shanti. And I believe it is a great point to wrap up this conversation. In essence, the future of publishing won't be shaped by AI alone. It'll be shaped by organizations that can combine trust, operational depth, responsible technology, and real partnerships.